We're here because free speech is under attack. We're here because people are being convinced that socialism works. We're here because people are being judged guilty until proven innocent. We are fighting back with facts. This is not a safe zone, so buckle up, Buttercup. This is the raw, naked truth.
Welcome to the Raw Naked Truth. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin, and with me for this Wallet Watch segment is Chris Calandra from Elliott Wealth Management. Chris, how are you doing?
Very good, Eric. Thanks for having me on again today.
It's our pleasure as always. So, what's going on in your world?
Well, that's a big question. There's so much going on. I think I wanted to touch on this increasing sense that America has that there's a lot of angst out there. I'm trying to say that the market, the American public is in a foul mood right now. There was a new Wall Street Journal poll that said that 83% of respondents called the state of the economy poor or not so good. That's 83%. The thing is, that means that it's not just Republicans, not just Democrats, not just independents, but just about everyone. And more than a third of those said that their own financial situation isn't so good. Their top concern is inflation. Surprise, surprise. And this all comes at a time when unemployment is very low at 3.6%, which normally when you had low unemployment, you would see greater satisfaction. I'll also add there's a very long-standing survey, Wrong Track, Right Track. It basically asked, do you think the country's on the right track or the wrong track? 7 in 10 Americans say that the country's on the wrong track, echoing the Wall Street Journal survey I just cited. So Americans are very uneasy. They're unhappy. They feel financially insecure, if not for themselves, for the economy and the country as a whole. And that is going to create a reckoning. It's affecting the markets. It's affecting people's behavior with money, including consumer spending habits. And it is impacting politics at a time when we have a big midterm election looming a few months from now.
It is. And of course, the devil is in the details. You mentioned the unemployment report. And, the Biden administration has been touting these record low unemployment numbers. But when you get into the details of the report, the job market for everybody is not equal. The unemployment rate for African Americans was lower during the Trump administration. The unemployment rate for women was lower during the Trump administration, and the unemployment rate for Hispanics was lower during the Trump administration. So, despite the overall number being close to record lows, this isn't being felt by large segments of the population.
This is very true. And when you think about it, Eric, uh, generally speaking, the group you just described are also the people that are being the most negatively affected by inflation. Uh, the wealthier you are, higher income, multiple income households, people that have a nest egg, people that have some of their wealth in homes, inflation is impacting them negatively, but not to the large extent as other groups. And the group you're talking about and the group that is the most negatively affected by inflation are the same. And that is an enormous problem for the country and for the Biden administration, too.
Well, it's a major impact on the Biden administration because these are the groups that were his base. And
Yes.
now they are not happy. I mean, Biden ran for president saying he was going to unite the country. Well, nobody imagined he was going to unite the country against him. I don't think I've ever seen 83% of the country agree on anything before.
This is true. And I think The Biden administration, in my opinion, has done a very, very poor job on the economic front. I'd probably say that about other fronts too, but sticking with the economy, and I think that this talking point that they're using about job creation is ringing hollow with the American people, because the unemployment rate is about the same now as it was before the pandemic. And when you think of job creation, you don't think of this special circumstance where the government created an economic slowdown because of the pandemic, maybe correctly, maybe not, it could be debated. But if your company shuts down because the government told you to shut down, and then you go back to work, that's not exactly job creation in the classic sense of what we would think about the economy growing and having a resurgence. And people just simply don't feel very good about what is going on. And the administration's current talking points around this, I think, are not only going to not help the Biden administration, I think it's actually a net negative, because people, including lots of folks that voted for Biden, are listening to these talking points, listening to this view, and are shaking their head and say, I don't think that's right.
No, that's absolutely true. And of course, we really haven't created any jobs because we still have not gotten back to the employment numbers from
That's
pre-pandemic. So, he can claim he's creating all these jobs. The American people know that's not true. Now, I also want to touch on Jamie Dimon's comments that we've got a hurricane coming. What do
yes.
you think of his comments? And, what's the hurricane that he's seeing?
Yeah, there's just so much negativity going on between international events like the war in Europe and inflation and high energy prices, the hangover, if you will, Eric, from the pandemic and everything the country went through, economic and otherwise. Jamie Dimon's belief is that the things will get worse from here, including a recession. Now, Jamie Dimon is considered one of the best bankers in the US and very well respected CEO, at least in most circles. I have a ton of respect for the man. I'm not as negative as he is, because what these numbers are showing me is that the American people are not happy. And when the American people are not happy, like 83% agreeing on a subject, that will necessitate change. I don't know how that'll happen. Some of it might take place with the midterm election. But that gives me cause for optimism that the American people are hurting now, but they are aware of it. They're not happy. And usually they can and will, in these circumstances, demand change in the country. And I believe that we can have a snapback and avoid a hurricane. So I'm a little optimistic, maybe more so than Mr. Diamond.
I certainly hope so. I mean, we've heard from a number of folks on Wall Street and in the banks that things are changing for a once in a lifetime
Yes.
chance. We've had a pandemic for the first time in 100 years. We've got an invasion in Europe for the first time in 75 years. These are historic times, and historic times necessitate adaptation and transition. Now, the question is how much pain is going to be felt by the American people during this transition?
This is true. I use the term, Erica, the changes from the pandemic are profound, and they will stay with us a long time. And it's almost in every aspect of our lives too, not just financial, not just jobs, not just politics, just about every area of our lives has been impacted profoundly from the pandemic and its after effects. And yes, when you're in transition, the country, the United States, has shown a wonderful ability to be dynamic, to evolve, to adapt. We saw that during the pandemic vividly. but it can be slowed down and hurt if you don't have good policies at the federal and state government level. And if you believe like I do, and I think you agree, is that the federal government, the Biden administration, is not doing a good enough job on the policy side as well as the rhetoric side. They're making things more difficult. And when you look at the state level, you see this. There are some states that are coming out of the pandemic better, stronger, recovering faster, that have more dynamic achievements in their economy. And oftentimes you could look at the decisions they're making at the state level, whereas you look at a place like New York City, which I know is not a state. You look at New York City, you know, they've struggled more than most other locales. And a big portion of that, I think, is how they're being governed, how they're being led, and the policies that have been implemented.
Yes, it does come down to policies. We've seen some great adaptations in the business world, entrepreneurs. We are seeing more small businesses formed now, which is actually not surprising because more small businesses are formed during recessions than any other time. And right now, you know, we could be on the precipice of a recession.
I think that a recession, at least a shallow one, is in the cards. In fact, if this quarter turns out to be a negative gross domestic product quarter, that would mean that we had two in a row, the first and the second this year. And the definition of a recession is two consecutive quarters where the economy shrinks. We may very well already be in a recession, even though it hasn't been verified by the numbers. That would not surprise me at all. And if we could keep it shallow and short, it'll be okay. But something's going to have to change for that to happen. Otherwise, we might be bouncing around with this difficult environment for quite a while. And perhaps I'm wrong in my optimism. Maybe things actually get worse before they get better. I could see that happening. I have a little bit more confidence about the American people that maybe things will turn around quicker than some of the naysayers think.
Well, I certainly hope so. And that's the Raw Naked Truth. You can catch every episode of the Raw Naked Truth at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and wherever you find podcasts. Thanks for being with us, Chris. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Eric.